I'm so excited to share with you today a story that I wrote myself called Labyrinth Hidden Legacy. It is based on the original film that we know and love by Jim Henson, geared towards those who loved the movie, but also safe for kids. Labyrinth Hidden Legacy by Tiffany Roundy, Chapter 1, Sarah's Family Reunion. Driving from the airport towards her parents' house in the small town she grew up in, Sarah was happy to be returning home. She had just finished college and was living with a roommate named Maureen. Maureen was pretty easy to get along with. She was sweet and had a lot of friends, which became Sarah's friends as well. Sarah was tidier at keeping a home, but the two put up with each other's differences. Sarah had always been tidy, wanting her possessions, her treasures, displayed. All of Sarah's things were treasures. She was choosy about what she owned. Each item had to reflect her personality, down to the simplest of things such as a notebook. She would find a regular boring notebook, add her flair with stickers or drawings to the cover to create something very unique, something very her. Fantasy was her forte, her passion. Driving home again, she imagined her bedroom as she had left it, with her favorite childhood books, her teddy bears, her horses, her games, minus Lancelot, her teddy bear which she had given as a gift to her baby brother after a scare 5 years prior. Lancelot had been her favorite bear at the time, sitting safely and regally on a high shelf near her bed. Toby, only 2 years old back then, would go into her room and take Lancelot. He must have been Toby's favorite as well. Sarah couldn't stand to have anyone touch her things, especially a spoiled baby. Things had changed around that time, though. Toby had been kidnapped, and Sarah had to choose whether to risk her life to save him or not. She could have gone back to her room and her life and been an only child again, never having to babysit against her will ever after. She chose him. Today, as Sarah passed the park she once spent most of her time at, hiding from her stepmother, she saw in the evening sky bright colors, beautiful and strong, and in the purple hue an owl flying gracefully, one lone owl. This sight created a chill which ran down the back of her spine, a memory, a feeling. She arrived at home and left her bags in the car as she went to the front door and greeted her family, hugging her father first with sincerity. Father and Sarah had not always seen eye to eye, but they still loved each other. Hugging Toby next. Although he was her half-brother, she didn't feel that way in her heart. Not anymore. And lastly, hugging her stepmom, the one whom Sarah had despised, had blamed for all her troubles in high school, who stole her father, brought a baby into the house, and put Sarah to work every day. However, something had changed. While struggling to rescue Toby all those years ago, Sarah had learned some lessons about life that would change hers. One of those lessons was that life is unfair, as well as the knowledge that there is more than one person involved in every situation, and that means there are different perspectives on each situation. The overall good, what has to be done, isn't always fair to those involved. That knowledge helped Sarah to overcome her negativity towards her stepmother, learning to have a good attitude when pulling her weight around the house and around the family. These days, Sarah and her stepmother, Irene, could honestly say they were family in every way. They had created a bond, a relationship. The family went into the house and had a delightful dinner, conversing about the most recent happenings of their lives and of Sarah's plans for her future. Sarah had just been hired for her first well-paid job. She was now a secretary at a successful company. She had a month before her start date. For the time being, she would continue to live with Maureen in their little apartment. Father and Irene were very proud. Things were going smooth and wonderful for every member of this family. They were truly blessed. Still, those are the times life throws us curveballs, doesn't it? The next morning, Father and Irene had a serious conversation with Sarah. "We know you love your bedroom," Father said, "but the house isn't big enough to keep it for you." Irene chimed in, "We wanted to make sure you are okay with it before we made a real decision or made any changes." Sarah's face saddened. In her mind, she had set that her bedroom would remain. Her father would always own the house, and her belongings would stay there, set up the way she loved them. It may be time for you to get a place of your own. Then you can fill the space with all of these treasures. Move them with you, Father suggested. Sarah decided to agree. She realized she had grown up, and maybe it was time for her bedroom to grow up too. Chapter 2, Strange. It had been a few days that Sarah had been home. She and Toby, who was 7 years old now, were playing hide-and-go-seek in the house. Dad and Irene were both at work. It was a rainy afternoon, which meant that indoor games were the activity to choose. They had already spent time individually that day, Sarah reading a fictional novel and Toby playing his toys alone. They had watched some television together. They had enjoyed sandwiches and fruit on the porch, watching the rain scene all around. Now they were playing hide-and-go-seek. It was Sarah's turn to seek. Toby sneaked into Sarah's room and hid underneath her bed. There he could see her carpet, which was in need of replacing, a pair of socks she had removed by her mirror but failed to place in the laundry hamper, and a stuffed toy that was somehow lost under the bed with him. It was a dog that Sarah had called Sir Didymus. Toby could hear Sarah speaking his name as she searched the hiding places around the house, getting closer and closer. As she entered into her bedroom, Toby smiled and watched her feet move across the floor. She stopped at her dresser. She was no longer calling for her brother or seeking at all. He could hear her speaking to herself. She gasped and said the name Hoggle in an endearing manner. Next, Toby heard a sound, a crunch. A moment later, Sarah dropped a cookie on the floor, and as it hit the ground, Sarah fell too. She collapsed upon the carpet. Toby gasped. He began to crawl to get out from under the bed and help his sister. Just then, something impossible happened. Something completely unfamiliar to Toby. A door opened. A door that had not been there a moment earlier. Toby could see just the bottom of it, but it stood out because the door brought forth a light. On the other side of this door was sky, trees, walls, and feet. Toby saw 2 boots walk through the door into Sarah's room. He was so startled that he did not come out from the space underneath the bed, and all he could do was watch, confused and unsure. The person with the boots leaned down and picked up Sarah, then walked her through the door. Toby's mind was racing. What should he do? What could he do? Rashly, he crawled out from under the bed and went through the opened door. Chapter 3, Sarah's New Home. Sarah opened her eyes. In front of her she beheld 2 fairies flying together in harmony. They were quite beautiful. Sarah realized that she was in a garden which was filled with multitudes of fairies and butterflies alike. It was a simple garden with whimsy. The flying creatures made it what it was, magical. Sarah felt joy and then confusion. Where was she? How did she get here? She remembered her bedroom, looking for something or someone, and then a present on her dresser. She had walked up to it and read a note. "Welcome home, Sarah, from your friends, Hoggle, Sir Didymus, and Ludo." What a surprise that was. Inside the mini box was a cookie. It tasted so sweet and delightful. That was the last thing she could recall. Inside the castle, the Goblin King spoke with his advisor, an elderly goblin that had helped raise him many years ago, Gority. He was tall for a goblin, with a long white beard that twisted in a zigzag manner. Gority wore a fancy green robe. Unlike most goblins in the kingdom, he was well kept and wore the finest materials. Upon his head, he wore a hat that symbolized his position as royal advisor. The hat was white with a gold V in the center. King Jareth enjoyed teasing the old one by guessing what the V stood for. "Vicious?" Jareth asked one day. "Volunteer? Va-va-voom?" Gority would never admit what it represented. When the royal children were young, he would appease the princess by telling her it was a symbol of her loyalty to her, Vile, the Princess Inara Vile, who also lived in the castle. The truth Gority kept to himself. The V stood for Variant, which to him represented how he stood out among all the other goblins. "She's waking up," the advisor said. He and Jareth could see Sarah through a window and across the garden. Sarah, however, did not realize she was being watched. "She will love the garden, won't she?" Jareth asked for reassurance. "It's a perfect gift, my king. She will love it," Gordy replied. "I have waited many years for this moment," Jareth said. "I could not forget her. I could not stop my love for her." "You should have everything you want, your highness. The plan will work," said Gordy. "The morsel she ate will have erased all of the negative memories by this time," Jareth said. "She will remember me, but only the good times, and she will believe that we are in love and she is mine." Sarah walked around the garden, admiring the small flying creatures. They had everything they needed to thrive and remain in the garden. "My dear," a voice rang through the air. Sarah looked around and saw the Goblin King in all his glory, dressed to impress his love. "Welcome back to my kingdom," he said. Sarah slowly remembered. She remembered him, that face, that voice, and the feeling of magic that came with his presence. "The Goblin King," Sarah whispered. She wasn't sure what she felt, if it was good or bad, but she felt something. "My love, you know me. Call me Jareth," he said sweetly. "Do you like your garden?" he asked, as he walked slowly toward her. "It is my present to you in celebration." "Celebration?" Sarah asked. "Of our love," the king responded. Sarah then remembered the ball, an event from her past. Extravagant dresses and fancy headwear, the beautiful music, the thrill and the magic that was in the air. And Jareth, he was there. He looked at her with love and desire. She felt that. And they danced. He held her in his arms as they spun around so gracefully. They floated as if there were no floor, and wings kept them up, never touching the ground. "We are celebrating that you have chosen to come live with me in my castle and be my princess," Jareth said. He was in front of her now. His face had reached hers, so close their breath combined as it left their bodies. Did Sarah love him? It must be true. She had no evidence against it. Jareth put his arms around her in a warm embrace. Slowly she reached her arms up around him in return, a little uncertainty remaining on her face and in her mind. "Do you love the garden?" the Goblin King asked once more. Sarah shook her head a little, trying to find her bearing. She wanted to feel confident and have a grasp on reality. She tried. "It is beautiful, Jareth," she responded, "like a dream." All of her memories, in fact, were hazy, like dreams during slumber. Chapter 4, Into the Labyrinth. Toby went through the door into this strange scene he did not recognize. It certainly wasn't his front yard. He saw the man carrying his sister. However, not wanting to be seen, Toby hid behind a tree and watched. The man carried Sarah toward a giant maze. He walked her straight through a gate in the wall of the maze. Right next to the wall was a strange tree, large and covered with hanging mesh-like leaves, drooping down like a willow tree that was more frightening than attractive. The man entered the maze and turned right. Toby looked around to see if anyone else was in the area. He saw bugs flying around, a couple of animals in the forest where he was, but no people. Toby felt scared of being seen. This was a feeling he felt often in his life. Brave was not a word used to describe Toby, not even by himself. He was afraid of the shadows outside at night. He was afraid of getting lost. He was afraid of standing out among his peers. He wanted to be brave. He just didn't know how to get there. Every moment, Toby hesitated. His sister was getting further and further away. He had to make a move. He had to run. His heart beat fast and he pressed his eyes shut tight. He took in a deep breath and then opened his eyes and ran as fast as he could. He ran to the gate and pushed it open. Turning to his right, he saw nobody. The man was gone. All that was there appeared to be an everlasting path with wall on either side. The scene was dismal. Roots and leaves and pebbles upon the ground, walls that were old and worn, and the sky. Gray clouds were rolling in and covering the sun. It appeared not a welcoming or happy place. Toby began to walk. Where did the man go? Toby asked aloud. Then he began to run. It was just wall on either side. No turns or entrances or exits. Being a child, Toby liked to feel things as he went through his day. As he went, he touched the wall on either side, thinking, racking his brain for an explanation. Then, unbelievably, the wall that was no longer there. Oh, he could see the wall, but he couldn't feel it. Chapter 5, Hector the Caterpillar. He turned toward the wall and attempted to push it with both hands. He went right through it. Magic? Toby asked. Toby looked left and right and he began to walk. He chose the right side. Toby decided that feeling the wall was a smart thing to do in this maze, so he raised his hands and touched as he moved. Suddenly a small cry came up. "Hey, you almost smashed me," it said. Toby looked closely and found a young blue fuzzy caterpillar on the wall near his fingers. "Hello," Toby said. "This place is magic," Toby said to himself. "The walls are magic and the caterpillars too." "Nah," said the caterpillar. "Optical illusions." "Oh, my name is Toby," he said. "How nice to meet you, Toby. I'm Hector," said the little creature. "Come inside for a cup of tea?" This hospitality he had learned from his father. Always be polite and invite guests in for tea. Toby wondered how that would even be possible. "Yes?" he asked more as a question than an answer. "Just hold on to that wall there and pull." The caterpillar nodded to Toby's right. So Toby felt with his hands until he reached the edge of the wall. He grabbed it and pulled toward himself, and the wall moved. It opened up like a giant door. Inside, Toby saw rows of bricks, as one would expect. Some of the bricks were missing, and in those spaces were a nice little home for a caterpillar family. Leaf beds they could munch on when they were hungry, tiny photos of the family hanging on their walls, miniature furniture set up quite nicely. "Why, hello," said another caterpillar from inside the home. "This is Mum," said Hector, nodding toward the other caterpillar. Just then, another blue caterpillar inched its way into the home from a hole in the wall. "I'm 'ome," the entering caterpillar said. He stopped and stared at Toby. "Hiya, Pop," Hector said. Hector's pop spoke with a British accent, although his wife and child did not. "Hi, I'm Toby," the young boy introduced himself. "I'm Harold. Nice to meet you." Toby did not know that Harold had met Sarah years prior, that she had entered the same magical realm back then. This day, Toby had not entered the labyrinth at the same gate Sarah had years ago. However, it was not altogether too far from it. Surprisingly, 3 tiny caterpillar heads popped up from under a leaf. "Meet the children," Harold said. "Addie, Ellen, and Henry." "How cute," Toby replied. "It's nice to meet you all." "Where am I? What is this whole place?" "You're inside the labyrinth," answered Harold. Harold's wife, Harmony, chimed in. "This is the Goblin King's kingdom." "Goblins?" Toby questioned. The thought sent a shiver down his spine, but he didn't know the reason why. Harmony poured a tiny cup of tea for Toby, and he carefully picked it up, knocking over a piece of furniture, then apologizing and fixing it for them. "My sister is here, and I have to find her," Toby pleaded. "A tall man with black boots and white wild hair has taken her." "Was he human?" asked Harmony. "Of course," replied Toby. "That would have to be our Goblin King," said Harold. "He lives in the castle at the center of the labyrinth." "Then that's where I have to get to," Toby declared. "How do I start the labyrinth?" "Take any turn towards the castle," said Harmony. "You already know about the illusions of the walls," said Harold. "Keep in mind that things are not what they seem here." Toby drank the drop of tea and placed the tiny cup back on the table. "Thank you very much. It was wonderful meeting you," Toby said. "I have to get going. Goodbye." Toby ran off to attempt the labyrinth. Harold said to his wife, "I wonder if his sister is anything like that human girl I met years ago." "I wonder if Toby wanted to know the shortcut to the castle," Harmony said. "Nah," Harold replied. "If he wanted to get there fast, he would have asked how to get straight to the castle." Harmony nodded in agreement.